Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and with me is Samantha Mansfield. Welcome, everybody, to our Monday afternoon topic of the week. And we thought we would take a breath and start and look at some what we would call proactive quadrant 2 planning time, preparedness time, et cetera. And we know there are a lot of initiatives this fall for the HR team members that listen to this, and anybody involved in talent. And your people are going to be coming off of deadlines here over the next few weeks, depending on where they are in their practice area or discipline or industry. And it's going to be normal to want to kind of take that breath and to pause and to take some time off, perhaps, but also maybe feeling a need to jump right back into what's next. And we just want to recommend maybe we just stop and pause and say, what are my priorities, between now and the end of the year? How can I apply some tried and true time management strategies? Maybe review some of those. We think time management is something that we should review on a regular basis, but also maybe some new strategies or new ideas to help us get centered on what those priorities are, and some activities that we could engage in to be as productive as possible this fall, but not overwhelmed, perhaps. Know where to maybe reset some expectations, know where to say, no, not now. I found myself doing that last weekend after our conversation about monkey mind. And it was very helpful just to get centered on what is all there and all the possibilities. So we thought we would take a kind of a time management approach today and just talk about some ideas and strategies to do so. And Sam, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say from a setup or context perspective before we jump into some ideas there.
Yeah, with what you said, what I was thinking is we can come out of these peak times where we're pedal to the metal and we're going fast, and to look at the next few weeks or months ahead coming out of that time and say, oh, I don't have to go as hard, and maybe I can just work on some things that aren't so taxing on my brain. And we can very easily stay busy, but we're not necessarily setting ourselves up for the next peak season that's right around the corner. And so making sure that when we're prioritizing the time, that we don't prioritize it to purely keep ourselves busy, fill up that timesheet. I got my 40 hours, my 45 hours in, whatnot, but instead use this time that gives us energy towards initiatives, projects, work that will actually inspire us, give us hope for the next busy season. And all of that we have to prioritize, because it is very easy to be busy in the day. Many things will keep us busy in the day. And we need those reminders that it's not about just staying busy, but what do we really want to accomplish, and to prioritize the right things. And that's what I thought would be so valuable for us to discuss right now. Because one of the things that I have heard leaders talk about over the last couple of years, and goodness knows this profession's been dealing with some extended busy seasons. I mean, even the hurricanes that have been going on, more deadlines are being extended again. And so those windows of where we can really be proactive in what we're doing and how we set ourselves up for success can get reduced and be smaller. And so it's even more important that we leverage that time so that we are working on things that do, again, generate hope, get us excited, and don't just make us feel like we're still going through the grind. And so leaders are saying that inhale is just lasting a little too long, but I think we need to give people an idea of how they can spend time on the right things.
Yeah. I think that's so smart. And I think that's one of our first, time management distinctions is busy versus productive.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can be busy. We can fill up our day with email and responding to people's requests and, scrolling the internet and researching and, whatever it might be. But I need to say, what do I need to accomplish each day? And I think that's, part of, we're our own worst enemy when it comes to like extension season that we're in now on the tax side anyway, is like we create, this stress and this tension and this last minute because maybe we do take too much of that pause in May. And we don't stop and say, all right, let's take a week and get centered and get organized and take maybe some time off. And then we need to create our timelines, and we need to, apply all of our skills and best practices so that we can, get the work done, be productive, and not get this pressure of these peak periods or as much. Like maybe the peak is lower, significantly lower. It'd be really nice. And there's so much that we can do to control that. And so now we're coming into end of audits and planning for audits next year. And we're coming into tax planning, and we've got end of the year on the CAS side. And so what do we need to do to be ready as we start to hit, new deadlines, new peak periods? And those cycles are different for everybody, depending on where we are. And so that whole distinction first between productive and busy, I think, is important. And then this idea of Stephen Covey quadrant, time management quadrants, which we study. And he talks about, more time in what he calls the proactive quadrant, quadrant 2, which is the planning, which is the coaching, the training, giving our team members review, feedback, checking in with our clients, after an engagement, in between engagements, to prepare for an engagement. But it's proactive. It's not in the middle of the engagement. Getting our gym schedule back on track if that got off track, which, by the way, we would say, how can we keep that maintained during a peak periods? Because that's when we need it the most. All of those types of things fall into, quadrant 2. So start to say and make a list of what are those things that we could focus on. And Sam, I saw you start to say something.
Oh, unfortunately, I think you froze.
Oh, no.
You disappeared from me. So I was about to speak up. But I love what you were saying, because there are so many different initiatives that we always wait for. Well, when's the best time? And unfortunately, like you said, Covey's quadrant 2, the important but not urgent, very easily never finds that time. And so for HR folks that are listening, these could be examples of you're trying to get that new performance evaluation system rolled out. That's an example of something where we may need to do some training or refresher if it was new earlier this year, and reminding people how to do quarterly updates in there so it's not trying to rack their brains at the end of the year, right? Important things like giving feedback to our team members and our colleagues. We're never too busy to give feedback, right? So those are some examples, but using the platforms that maybe you've put into place. Or where are we with artificial intelligence? And that could be just another thing. But some of those, for some people, that's really exciting and they love that stuff. And for others, it's going to be eating the frog. And that's another time management distinction, which is there are some of these things that they are incredibly valuable and important, but there are things that we just don't look forward to doing. And so what we need to do is work with our folks and start the day with it. So maybe we don't plan all of the trainings and discussions on some of these items to be at the end of the day. But let's set an example and have our folks working on some of those items at the beginning of the day. And then it just takes that lift off our shoulders. I got it done. Okay. Now I've started my day productively. Man, what next can I conquer? And it really is this psychological momentum that can get us going. And then we feel so good about what we got done. Now, there still may be some mess. There still may be a clutter in our email inbox or something along those lines, but you're actually producing something. And like you said, Tamera, you're being productive. And we want to honor that. And we want to reward that. And so let's work with our leadership and identify what are the priorities so that we're setting clear expectations with people, and then really give them acknowledgement when they're making movement on that. Because again, it's easy. It can be mindless to just, okay, I'm going to swirling around in my inbox, and what did I really get done? So let's eat those frogs. Let's get some of these big things that we've been needing to make movement on going. And let's do that with some of our scheduling and calendar blocking and starting it to be first of the day, not waiting into the end of the week when everybody's mentally exhausted as it is. And all of those are techniques that can drive some additional productivity.
Yeah. And one of the things that you're pointing to, Samantha, is this idea of progressing things.
Mhm.
I think sometimes, frogs are usually the things we don't like. They're ugly, and we need to knock them out because we'll avoid them and avoid them and avoid them. But also they're these big things. And it can feel so massive that it's like, I don't even know where to start, so I'm not going to. And we would say, what can you do? What step can you take to progress it? And like you just pointed to one, I can schedule a meeting, then the meeting's on the calendar. Okay, now what do I need to do to be prepared for the meeting? I need to, create an agenda. Maybe I need to send out some materials to review. Maybe I need to get some information from a resource. Now I can start to figure out what I need to do to progress it. But I think that's one of the things that stops us is it feels so daunting that we avoid it. And then it's quadrant one, which Covey defines as hair on fire, emergency, problem, and then people are probably upset. And so instead, if we can move that time to say, how can I progress it into quadrant two, that's helpful. And one of the skills and tools to use is timelining and create a list, back into our date. So we could do this with engagement planning. I was talking to a new audit partner, and she was like, I'm just afraid we're going to have a repeat of, same as last year. And she goes, and I was, as we were talking, she was like, I can see 80% of my clients, I know their timeline. I know their board. I know the issues. I know the staff we can and cannot use. I can create a timeline. And I could be doing that right now and have 80% of my clients mapped out so that we know. And then I can meet with those clients in addition, which often she said doesn't happen. And then I can figure out where do the other 20% fit, or new ones. Maybe that 20% is new or some combination of it is new, but we don't stop to timeline. I'm like, I think that's a brilliant idea, and have a manager do it with you, or you do it, practice gradual release of responsibility model. You do it, they watch, you do it, they help, and then they do the next one. And so that they can build the timeline, they can build the budget, they can create the communications. And it just continues to elevate everybody. But we don't often stop to create those timelines, those deliverables, which then goes back to producing. What are we going to produce? It's those deliverables that we're going to focus on. So, Sam, I'll let you start.
Yes. Well, to your point too, Tamera, it's something that many folks are not taught. And yet it's such a valuable skill to be able to have, because one of the pieces is that we also have to think about the impact of the timeline. And I run into this an awful lot too. And you made reference to this, if you have team members that have been pretty taxed with the October 15th deadline coming up, right? No pun intended on that. But with that, one of the things that I've been hearing this summer are leaders saying, gosh, people are not realizing that, again, this big inhale that they're taking, and the fact that they're saying, we have this whole fall, we have all fall to get this done. And now all of a sudden they're having to work long hours and they're pushing to get all this stuff done because we didn't timeline and look at if we have 20% of our extensions done by this time, and if we have this much done by this time, then we won't have as heavy a lift. And I fully acknowledge that clients play a big part in this. Don't get me wrong. But we also don't manage clients quite as well as we could. So I love the teaching them how to timeline that better and recognizing that I can make a difference on this and what can I pull forward. But at the same time, let's not pull forward all the client work where we don't get to some of those strategic items that we need to get to as well, like improving my skills, like improving our processes and redesigning those, like having meetings with clients out of cycle, like looking at our client list and saying who needs to be dismissed after we complete this deadline and we don't engage with them again. All of those are important. And that's where, again, where do we actually have the time on our calendars to do it? And doing a truly tactical item like blocking our calendar. I'm going to work on this at this time. And then we need to honor that with each other. If I see Tamara's got focus time on her calendar to be able to work on some of these types of important items, I need to make sure that I don't say, oh, she's just working on internal stuff. I'll go ahead and book this right over. I can ask her, is that flexible? Could she move and work on that at another time? But we need to honor that with each other and be respectful so that people know that, hey, no, you really do mean that. You really do mean I should be focusing and working on these important items that we always feel like we can get to it later, but later never comes. So make sure that we're doing those pieces and make sure that we are looking at what is the impact if I don't get this done, or if I don't get this done this week, who else needs to be involved in this, that then maybe they have vacation, or maybe they have another client engagement that's going to have them tied up for a couple of weeks. And now all of a sudden, oh, shoot. now they can't get to that. And I was just thinking, that's okay. And now we might be December, January before we really get movement again because that person wasn't available. And it seems so simple, but we just don't always think that way.
Right. I love that. And I think while you're talking about calendars, a couple other strategies, you were alluding to this, like focus time. We all have, flow time when we're super productive. And mine happens to be, early in the morning. I can just, get a lot done. I haven't asked you, Sam, if yours is, but I hear you scheduling stuff at 7 in the morning. So I wonder if you've got, a similar, timing of that. But, Jen on our team, hers is late night, her flow time, is between, 10 p.m. and midnight, or, 2 a.m. sometimes, depending on what's going on. But she likes that heads down dedicated time. I like the quiet time in the morning, my cup of coffee, I'm fresh. Now I have to be careful though, not to get sucked into my email or get distracted with all the other possibilities. So I have to be really clear what I'm using that time for. And if we can know that about each other, we can respect that time, but we can schedule it. So let's say you've got to do a compensation review, for HR professionals here listening. When should you be doing that? And maybe you do some time in the middle of the day and then you come back to it and review it in the evening or morning, depending on like when you're really clear and productive. We can't always accommodate that, but I can try to schedule it that way, at least for final review or final touches, so that I'm looking at things objectively and clear. And teach your team about that. Have your managers teach their people about it. And then I was, pointing to turn off the distractors, auto notices on your Outlook. I know we all use Teams now. If I have focus time, it's do not disturb, so that won't flash up. And so, there's ways that we can put the settings in our technologies to support us, because sometimes there are time wasters, time management detractors. They're the ones that are the culprits that get us in trouble. So there's, a whole bunch of ideas and strategies there from just how we're using our technology and our calendars and making friends with our calendars. Some people are not friends with calendars. They're overwhelmed by it. And they're like, you want me to schedule all this on my calendar? And then I look at it and it's busy. And I'm like, it's my boss. It is telling me what I need to plan for and prepare for, and, putting that in there, but not everybody is there. And so that's another thing we can talk about, like strategize. How can you use it to support you, not to overwhelm you? So those are just some, calendar time management techniques.
Yes. And if you're going to do those, if you're saying, yes, this sounds good, I want my team to be successful, I want them successful in setting these objectives and making this progress, make sure that as a leadership team, you are discussing as well that we understand that our colleagues are going to have do not disturb on, and that we trust them. that means that they are being heads down in some of this work and what they're producing in that time. So instead of, especially working remote, which convergence coaching, we all do, we know, and it's not a matter of pinging them and saying, well, but they're not responding to my email. You've been working on that comp review for 2 hours and I haven't heard from you. Well, that's a lot of computation, a lot you're probably trying to wrap your head around. You probably need a couple of hours to really be heads down with that. And have time that you're open and available to ask questions. But let's make sure as a team and as leaders that, again, we have the trust and that we are, in fact, giving that option to people to be able to say, don't disturb me right now. I'm working on this and I'll be back at you. And then I love what you said about email. I know we're coming into the end, but if I can offer that tip as well, don't start your day with email. Get one of the objectives that you have for the day done, even if it's small, but don't start your day with email, because what some studies have shown is that starting your day with email puts you immediately in reactive mode, as opposed to letting you start your day being proactive in getting after what you knew you needed to get done for the day. So even if it's something small, get that done before you pop open that email. So I wanted to back you up with that one, Tamara.
Eat the frog first, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And one last strategy around that, because you can think, I'm not going to touch email right away in the morning. Like some of you are like, no, that would stress me out. It's called a Pomodoro method. And you take 25 minutes and you focus on something, and then you take a 5-minute break. And there is all kinds of science and studies about if you get up, take a break, it feels like it's unproductive, but it shifts the oxygen and blood flow and everything else in your focus, that you can come back and focus on it. So you could just take 25 minutes in the morning. And what's that one or two things, even if it's one? I know that sometimes we're like, that doesn't feel productive, but sometimes it's a 25-minute thing I could get done before I pop open the email. Then I can then start on a productive, proactive note. Or those larger projects, maybe I schedule 90 minutes. I'm going to be heads down, focusing on performance reviews, or I'm focusing on, a client report that I have to write, or whatever it might be, that I can take 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, get some water, walk around the block, whatever it might be, come back 25 minutes, 25 minutes, and do that 3 times. And you will find that you are so productive. And that's what we're committed to. That's why we wanted to bring this up, is because we know that we could go into, kind of a lull here, or we could go into manic going, we've got to get ready for our next busy period. We want to say, let's be somewhere in between here, and let's figure out what our priorities are. Use some of these time management strategies. Hopefully they were helpful. We will send you or put some links. Caroline will put some links to some of the articles with these strategies as well. But we'd love to hear what you use or what your team talks about are effective time management strategies, so we can be productive, so we can keep things moving, but maybe at a better pace. So that's what our goal is for you today. So thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next week on our HR Huddle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.